This is Finding the Perfect Match. I'm Tim Selden, president of the Montessori Foundation. With me is my dear friend Clint Lausch, who is the proud owner of a fantastic independent school marketing company called Ames. Don't ask me what that stands for, but I love the company. And Amanda, where are you from?
Am at a Montessori school. We're an AMI school in Madison, Wisconsin. We serve K through, I'm sorry, not K, preschool through eighth grade.
Yep, person after my own heart. So I just came back from big conference in Australia where we didn't have all the AMI trainers, but we had quite a few of them that were there that were not at Chennai at the conference with Lynn Lawrence. So it's really good to see you.
Nice.
So
Thank you.
other people may join us. I think the waiting room is off. I'm just going to double check that it is so that people can come in if they wish to anytime. I see some people I didn't know were here. HOMS. That sounds like a Montessori school. Don't necessarily recognize the name. Play the join and leave. But I encourage anyone who's on board, if you're willing, please turn on your camera. Feel free to unmute at any time. This is meant to be a conversation. Clint, usually, hello there. How are you? 2018, whatever the name is. And hello there. I see HOMS.
Hi, it's Colleen at Harbor Oaks Montessori School in Atlanta.
Hi, Colleen. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good.
We're glad to have you here on this cold beginning of late fall day, at least in this hemisphere. Clint, do you have any housekeeping you want to do before we just jump right in?
Let's dive in.
Okay, so I will, as always, make a short pitch. The Montessori Foundation was the original Montessori organization created in 1992 to nurture, inspire, and support the development of strong, authentic Montessori schools. We are neutral turf, whether you're AMI, AMS, MCI, MEPI, IMC, Aardvark Montessori Association of Greater Tanzania. We don't care. The bottom line is we're here to help. We also love people that are not Montessori schools. So if you're running a Montessori school, a charter school, a Reggio Emilia school, a Waldorf school, or a Stante prep school, we love you too. Clint, you work with every kind of school, public, private, faith-based, all sorts. And the reason why we're together is I actually needed you at our lab school, and you saved our bacon. And you did it with such grace and kindness and attention. I really came to appreciate how smart you are and how good what you're doing is. And I've worked with the best, Nito Marketing, School Success, you name it. Every group that's out there, Montessori Foundation is usually, because we work with so many hundreds of schools around the world, they're usually working with somebody like you. And usually we get to see what happens behind the scenes. And I like what I see behind your scene. Clint, anything you want to say before we get started?
No, that might be one of the nicest intros of all time. So I'll take it. I appreciate it, Tim.
Okay.
And it's a pleasure doing this with you and doing this every week. Yeah, we've been doing this for over a year now, and it's been great. And I'm looking forward to another year doing this.
All right. So other people may join us. If they do, they are more than welcome. And again, the intention is a conversation among trusted friends. So all of us, we all have to find new families that want to come in. I think we'll all agree that, once a family is part of the school, the ideal is a lot easier to keep them than it is to get a stranger. But what we don't want is people to come in and argue with us about, we would love you a lot more if you weren't Montessori. Um, or we love you and you're great, and at age 4, we're going somewhere else. And so what we're trying to do is figure out, what do we do with, this is a show that looks at every single aspect of the whole dating process, the how to make the phone ring, how to get people to know we exist, how to tell our story in a way that they understand it, how much money do we need to spend, what's the best way to spend it, How do you get the board on board, or the private owner, which I'm a big believer in privately owned Montessori schools, which I know sounds straight coming from a nonprofit. I just respect the idea of a family-owned school, and I know how wonderful that can be. I also work with lots of boards. My family's school is a nonprofit, the Berry School in Silver Spring. We're coming up on our centennial. I think we are currently the oldest Montessori school still operating in the United States. We were, believe it or not, the first Montessori high school, despite what NAMTA periodically says. I'm a graduate of the class of 63, and I assure you, I was not the first class. And that's another story for another day. So the bottom line is, whether it's making the phone ring, whether it's, taking people through the process, figuring out, are we the right match for each other? Are we going to make each other crazy? Is what you want and what we can deliver really consistent? Do we have written brochures? Do we advertise on a bulletin board? Do we advertise on NPR? How do you make the phone ring, or people clicking on things? And what do you do? Because we want to get them on campus. We all know the children are the best salespeople for what we do, but how do we actually run that experience? And by the way, because the typical parent, they really come into there's a couple of groups. One is, they know who you are. They know they want to go send their kid to your school. They've just been waiting for the kid to be old enough, and they are ready to rock and roll as soon as you're willing to have them. That's great. That's not the norm. The normal parent doesn't know Montessori from monastery. They're just trying to solve a problem. They got a Pilates lesson tomorrow, and they need someone to care for their kid, or the kid's at home and they're going crazy, or they sense the child is capable of so much more, or their sister's got their kid at your school, or they heard that Montessori was the goal. Who knows what they heard? The bottom line is, we want to find the right fit, and we know they're probably going down a list. They Google Montessori near me, preschool near me, private schools near me, and they're going to go down the list of the first 5, and whoever answers the phone instantly or impresses them in some dramatic way, that's probably who they're going with. So the issue is, how do we, without prostituting ourselves, how do we make the most of the limited dollars, the limited time, the limited hours we have in the day to do all this stuff? How do we get these people onto our campus? What do we do when they're on our campus? And then what happens after that? And that's, I just described more, better, and different than what we can do in one day. I will add one more thought. Once we get them in the school, that's when the marriage begins. That's only the first step. And we got to figure out, what do we do with them once they're part of our family, right? So, open house. Open house means a lot of things to different people. It may mean a once a year event that you do, where you invite the whole community to come down and see your school. It could mean something you do several times a year on a Saturday. It could mean what other people call a school tour, although I would argue just taking people around your school is a waste of time, even though the kids are the best salespeople. Another issue is, how do you avoid wasting your time? If they're looking for a school with whips and homework and workbooks and letter grades and teaching of some faith that you're not teaching, you're probably wasting each other's time. So how do we help people to figure out, are we what they're really looking for, without being snotty? We want to make friends, but we can't afford to spend every minute of our day talking to people who say, yes, but that doesn't sound like what my kid needs. My kid needs discipline. So that's what we're talking about today. We'll call it the open house or the tour. And what we're talking about is, what is it? When is it? Who's at it? Are the kids there? Is the family dog there? What do you do while they're there? How long does it last? Do you serve them martinis? I mean, all the different things we could do are part of this day's conversation. So, Clint, where you fit in is you're one of a few hundred people in the United States that I know of who really try to cause people to be aware that we exist and click here and schedule a time to come see how good a school can be, right?
Yeah, that's the next part. It's one of the common questions I always get, which is what kind of event should I run? You know, what works best? And it is very interesting across the board. Everybody's a little bit different. Some love open houses, some hate open houses. Some are doing virtual, some aren't doing virtual anymore. I'm seeing virtual work really well, by the way. Um, so yeah, it's very interesting the what and you know, Tim, to your expertise in terms of what do you see as what is the best, most efficient type of experience possible for both the school and then for the parents, and what's going to be attractive to them, and really how to wow them on those tours or events.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, every parent's different. A lot of parents don't want to come in. I am absolutely sure that that all of you who are listening and watching, you've had parents call up and say, "Well, my spouse is way too busy. She's, surgeon, and she's got operations from dawn to dusk and can't come in until next July. But I need a kid to be in your school tomorrow. What are we going to do here?" Or I went to Montessori, or I went to your school when I was a kid. I don't need to come see it. I already know what it is. Or look, damn it, I'm just willing to put the money on the table. What do you need from me? Or, I've got 5 appointments for 5 minutes each at Reggio Emilio and Waldorf and the public schools, and I can fit you in next Tuesday. Yeah, it all starts with what are we trying to do? Who would we like to have there, and what are we going to do with them? So why don't I hush up for a minute, and those of you who are willing to unmute and willing to turn on your mic, talk to me. What do you do?
I have heard every single one of those reasons you just gave. um, I've had people come in, and when they realized it would be kind of like a tour and a process, tell me they didn't realize we were so bureaucratic and leave. So I guess I'm kind of here to ask that question of, what is it? Is this process an important piece of finding mission aligned families? If they don't have the time for a tour, is that sending me the message that they're not mission aligned? I'm just kind of here to get everyone else's feedback and thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I bet you have your own thoughts.
Do I? Oh,
Yeah.
yes, about it. Yeah, I mean, first of all, if it's somebody who isn't going to take the time, I guess, to start that initial visit, it certainly leaves a bad taste in my mouth and makes it look like maybe they're not a mission aligned family, I guess. But then I also want to be, make sure I'm being inclusive and understanding of people's time and schedules. But we can't be all things to all people, so still trying to find a middle between all of that.
Yeah, I think what I think you're saying is, one, there's the issue of, we are not easy. We need people that are into us, that actually want us. On the other hand, we need to fill those spots. I mean,
Right.
Trevor Eisler, get those seats in the bums. We get those bums into the seats. And I mean rear ends. We need to have more people who want us than we have spaces. And then there's a whole issue of is it first come, first served, and so forth. So, how do we do it? How do we make the phone ring? And here's a question for you all. How many times a day does your phone ring with people who are not current parents calling to say, did my child go to the bathroom yet, or did he eat his lunch?
I mean, are you asking about just straight up like inquiry calls?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Tim
Yeah.
Sheldon. I'm wondering, do you have any space in your
Yeah.
school?
Yeah, I get most of mine online, I would say now. So
Mhm.
yeah, most of our leads come from the website.
Yeah, and it really doesn't matter where they come from. It's going to be word of mouth. It's going to be the website. It's going to be Google ads. It's going to be great big billboards on a highway. It can be all kinds of things. But I guess my question is, how many leads do you get a day? What do you think is a reasonable number? I won't keep you in breathless suspense. My number is 30. I want 30 new leads a day. And to do that means you really got to work smart. And of course, you may have a school where you only have 30 spaces and you'll be full very quickly, which is not a bad thing. I mean, if you had 5,000 people lined up wanting to get in your school and you you just don't have room for them, that's great. But we really want to market to such an extent that we look something like I don't like going to restaurants like this, but probably Olive Garden or some of these other chain restaurants where you wait for an hour to get in. Um, we want to be, we don't want to be the hidden secret of our town. We want everyone to know who we are. We want the right people to be desperate to get in. We want the people that are looking for something else to feel like, you know what, these people, they are so nice. They will help me figure out where can I find the kind of school that I'm looking for. We are looking to make friends, but we need to have lots of customers. And you cannot spend enough money on marketing, in my opinion. By the way, I'm also a great believer that if you're smart, you can do an awful lot of it without spending cash dollars, but you are still spending something. You're spending your time, your parent volunteer time, your daughter's time. Somebody's got to be doing the work because you can't just assume it's going to happen. But the ideal is to have a tremendous number of people who are trying to get admission into your school. Then it's a secret of how can we get the right people so we're not being hit on like a beautiful young college kid in some party getting hit on by people who she thinks are creeps. We want the right people approaching us because we are not looking to simply go home drunk with the first guy we meet. We are looking to make a family. We're trying to find people who will love us for who we are. We're not looking to change them. We're not looking to sell them on something they don't want. We're not looking to bore them to death. We're looking to find connection and relationship, regardless of what kind of school we are. We in this broadcast on a typical week, we've got Catholic schools, we've got charter schools, we've got a school uh, in Chicago that works with children that are all neurodiverse, and they have their own unique way of doing it. There are all kinds of schools out there in the world, and the competition is free. You can go to public school; you don't have to pay a dime. And so we're selling something that people don't in general need. And so we're looking for a weird subset of people. Now, admittedly, you and I may be taking in the majority of our families when they're young enough that the government schools are not yet offering free. But we still have competition. We got grandma. We got the person who's got 12 kids in her home. We got, parent co-ops of different sorts, these little micro schools. We've got the church schools, the synagogues, they're all over the place. So the question is, who are we and who would love us? And of course, since today's topic is the tour, what do we do when they come? There's the issue of who do we want on that tour? How can we help them screen themselves out so we're not arguing? And have you ever had one of those tours where you got two or three families and at least one parent is really giving you a hard time? Like, what the heck is wrong with you people? Do you really think this is the right way to educate kids? I have. I've had that a lot. Um, and so part of the goal is how do we get the right people to come towards us and the people who aren't going to love us to go elsewhere? Because if someone is in a room, and I don't care whether it's a one-on-one tour, which a lot of schools do it one-on-one, but then they get in the school and they come to some event and they discover they have nothing whatsoever in common with the other parents of the school and they feel creeped out because of what they hear. And it could be that our people are too crunchy granola and they're looking for a much classier kind of clientele. It could be that they thought Montessori was very liberal and they suddenly discover they're in a school that is a Christian Montessori school or a Montessori school where everyone has an assigned seats and workbooks and homework. I mean, I know a lot of Montessori schools that do that kind of stuff. And I scratched my head and I said, what kind of Montessori school are you? But I'm not the Montessori police and I can't stop it. And so there, I always say, don't sell Montessori. If that's your deal, don't sell Montessori because everyone has their own understanding of what that means. So what we're trying to do is to figure out, okay, how do we get the right people to come? And then what do we do when they come? Anyone else want to jump in with your thoughts? Because we'd love to hear from you. Unmute, talk to me. Or don't talk to me. Do you have a cute little dog with you when you do a tour? You may be in a state where you're not even allowed to have a dog on campus. I come from a world where dogs are the norm. I used to walk around with 2 Great Danes off leash on a big campus. And those dogs followed me everywhere. They go right back in the classroom. You can imagine what my Montessori teachers thought. But the dogs were just part of the deal. The kids would just sort of lay on them, read to them, and the dogs loved the kids. Eventually, I learned to downsize. I have 2 little Maltese that are adorable, and the kids just love the Maltese. They check them out like library books. Can I borrow Bikram? Sure. I'm going to read to Bikram. Bikram needs to be read to. Sure, take Bikram. And hopefully I see Bikram at the end of the day. Anyway, tours. What do we do with tours? What day? What time? Individual. What do you all do?
Well, we allow people to sign up through Jotform. I invite them and then send them a message with that link. And then when they arrive, we usually, chat for a little bit, talk about what they're looking for, why they're interested in Montessori. And then we always have families observe in a classroom for a little bit. I don't really know how common that is in other schools. Obviously, as you guys know, observation is so important in Montessori. So we really value that. So they observe for about 15 minutes in each classroom, maybe the level they're interested in, and then the following level. And then we walk around the school and check things out. And then just your typical Q&A afterwards is how I do it. But I would love to get different ideas.
Absolutely. I'm noticing a lot of stuff is popping up in the chat. So I'm assuming everyone today has a cold and they're not going to open up their mic because either there's dogs barking in the background, they're eating their lunch or something, or they just don't want to open their mouth. But we love to hear from you. But I am noticing the things that are coming into the chat. So one of the things about the one-on-one tour, let's talk about the pros and cons of that. When my mom passed away in 1971 and I started running the Barry School, we saw a lot of families in the course of a week. I did one-on-one tours for 3 years. There was no time to do anything else. That's all I did was tours. A tour normally is going to take at least an hour. I would suggest to you that a tour is only the equivalent of the dating service. It's just lunch. The typical parent it's someone like a house hunter. They look at 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 schools, and they may do more than one in a day, or they do one a day. But basically, the first time they see a school that knocks their socks off, treats them really well, implies that they have room for them, that their kid would be welcome there, that's the school that's going to get their money. On the other hand, what's the purpose of an open house? Is it really to like a gymnasium, like a wellness center, a fitness center, Gold's Gym, 24-hour, whatever they call that thing? If you walk in and you take a tour and you're not grossed out by the locker room and you don't feel creepy, can you just sign up on the dotted line right there? I mean, what's the deal here? What are we doing with these doors? Do we believe that every child deserves Montessori? And by the way, I'm not sure if anyone's here who's not Montessori this week. It looks like this is Montessori Old Home Week. But I don't care again whether you're running a Montessori school or a Reggio Emilia school or a independent school, Quaker school, it doesn't matter. Do you believe that every single child whose parents want them to go there, that we ought to take them in first come, first served? That's a legitimate question. I'm really asking it. Well, I'm going to suggest that there probably are at least three major schools of thought. One is it's kind of like we're selling insurance, and we pay our people on the number of sales they close. And obviously, what we want our people to do is, make the case, wound with all the unique things that we offer, get them signed up on the dotted line, get them to apply, and quite often applying is either the same thing as you're in, or applying is you are now on the waiting list, and as spaces become available, we'll fill it from the waiting list. So that's fine. To me, that's kind of like going home from a party with the first guy that asks you. It's not what I personally recommend. I really believe that whatever kind of school you've got, two things you do not want to do. One is rely on word of mouth. I don't care how good your word of mouth is. All it takes is one bad newspaper story, and your word of mouth is trouble. A fire, rumors that your board is unhappy, that your head of school has just been fired, that a kid got hurt, the school might close. I mean, whatever can possibly happen, whether it's true or not true, if what you're doing is relying on word of mouth can bite you. I love it. Don't get me wrong. There is nothing more powerful in terms of validating whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a private school, or whether your parents are trying to fix you up with a guy who they think you ought to date. Word of mouth sometimes is certainly more believable than just a stranger. However, we need to do more than that, because again, it could be you're in a town where there are more people that want to go to schools like yours than there are spaces, and you have no trouble filling up year after year after year after year. And guess what? I've been doing this I started I started in 1968. I've been doing this a long time. I have seen so many schools in the United States, in Canada, in Australia, around the world, big schools, small schools, that all of a sudden something changes. And so I just do not believe in trusting word of mouth alone. I do love word of mouth. There is nothing more powerful. Now, by the way, the opposite is true. If you've got an employee who thinks that your school could be better, and they're a little disgruntled, and they say something negative about you, guess what? They are more believable than anyone else around. If they complain, it is absolute kiss of death for your school. And that happens. There are many a teacher who gets palsy-walsy with parents, and they will say things they shouldn't say, and it really is out there working the parking lot mafia. So, again, word of mouth is great. Chance favors the prepared mind. In other words, without a very conscious, deliberate program of recruitment and retention, shall we say, paid and unpaid marketing, you are likely to sooner or later fly into a mountain. So I really believe in it, and I love it. When you're in a town like I used to be in Washington, D.C., everyone sent their kid to private school. They were used to spending $50,000 a year. If I was in Manhattan, it's great. The only problem is people tend to go to the same handful of schools that they think of as the schools. In Manhattan, there are 300 really, really popular schools. But there's something like 10 times that number of schools in the greater Manhattan area. And those schools tend to suffer unless they market like mad. The second thing you got to do is, again, you've made the phone ring. That's a whole different series of webcasts that Clint and I do. How do we make the phone ring? We want to answer that phone within 3 rings. If they send in an email form, you not only want to have automated responses, which, by the way, Clint and his AI assisted software makes it feel like a real person's at the other end. And it's great. But we also want to follow up with a real human being. And I think we ought to follow up within an hour at the latest, because that same parent, I don't care if they're a lawyer, I don't care if they're a physician, I don't care if they're the superintendent of schools, they're probably, if they're in the independent school market, they are probably going down a list. Whoever talks to them in real time first is the one that they're going to bond to, unless you're really nasty. And we're not nasty, we're good. So there's the whole issue of when do we have them come? Do we have a dog at our side? What are we going to do with them? All of that good stuff. So here's my personal recommendation. The first is I do not believe on one-on-one tours unless there's some reason why we got to. My reasoning is simple. If I'm going to get 30 calls a day, no matter how hard I try, I know that of those 30 calls a day, maybe a third of them will actually be people who might be the right fit. So I'm going to go through 30 people to end up with 10 who might be a good fit. Of those 10, at least 5 of them aren't ready to come and see me for a lot of reasons. One is people often contact us about a year before they're ready to actually apply. And they just may be trying to, what's your tuition? Or I got a question, or I want to get a sense of what kind of people you are. Because what they're looking for is simple. This is their precious child. This is, everyone's worried that, my kid's going to be happy. Everyone's worried whether my kid's going to make friends. Everyone is worried whether people are going to treat me like dirt, especially if you're not the wealthiest, most exclusive family in the community. You're a person of color. If you're from another country and you have an accent, there's so many things that can make us feel like, are these people going to see me for who I am? Are they going to see my kid for the wonderful human being that he or she is? So the whole issue is what's driving the parent? And they're either running away from something, like my kid has been beaten up for the last time in the local public school, or my kid is bored out of his skull, or I've got him home with grandma, and if he has one more day watching, Judge Judy on TV, he's got to get into school tomorrow. I have 2 wonderful stepchildren. And when I first met their mother, it was very simple. She was a lawyer. She had 2 little tiny kids, and we were the only school in town. She didn't care about Montessori. We were the only school in town that 1 had horses, 2 had a lot of land and forest. That was important to them. And 3, we were willing to take a 2-year-old kid. They were the only school. And so, people come for all kinds of reasons. But again, when she came, we did do a one-on-one tour, which was unusual for us, because what I found is I was doing nothing but tours. I mean, there's only so many hours in a week, and you're probably not going to do a tour at 10 o'clock at night, and you don't want to do it on Saturday and Sunday when the building is empty. So you only have a narrow window. And then there's the issue of who's doing the tour. Now, here's another one of my truisms. I don't care how big my school is. One, I don't want one more administrator working for me than I have to. I want to keep my admin team as lean as I possibly can, because those people may be wonderful, they're brilliant, but quite often they basically make work to look busy. So I really want to work smart, and I am a great believer in outsourced services and outsourced software. Frankly, I mean, the right software and the right service partner can save you a lot of time and a lot of money. I will give Clint you another bone here. You know, Clint is normally what I would pay Clint as an outside marketing agency would be somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000 a year for a school of, let's say, 300 or more. I happen to know that you'd have a hard time spending that kind of money with Clint if you tried. If you find the right people, and the trick is, don't use your brother-in-law who kind of does a little Google ads on the side. If you hire an expert and you find the right partner, and there's a lot of them out there, don't get me wrong, but if you find the right partner, they do a really first-class job of listening carefully to what you need, what's working, what's not working, helping you to figure out your marketing message, automating everything that can be marketed, and making your life a whole lot easier so you can leverage the small administrative team that you've got. I ran the Berry School with 650 kids on 2 properties, 45 acres, which is their current home, and 17 acres, with only 5 administrators. And we went infants through the 12th grade. And we had 25 buses and 25 horses and a year-round program. In other words, what I'm telling you is, if you work smart, you can really operate lean and mean. And I think that really helps. I want to keep those nonprofits rolling in. The second thing that I would recommend is, while I certainly am happy to see a family one-on-one, and there are pros and there's cons to that, it's much more powerful, in my opinion, to do regularly scheduled open houses where we have a multiple group of people coming in. I'm not talking about these crazy things where you got 100 people and you're giving out balloons and doing pony rides and all the teachers are coming in on a Sunday. And that's fine too, if that's what you want to do. What I like to do is regular weekly open houses. I schedule 2 hours of my week for each one of those open houses. We start on time, we end on time. Normally, I don't need anyone with me. It just depends on the school and what's going on. But basically, what I do is I set up a room where they all assemble. That's the reception room. By the way, I train my office staff to watch these people carefully, because they're typically going to start showing up 10, 15 minutes before we actually go into the tour. There's no one smarter in your school than your school secretary. If he or she is watching carefully what's going on and paying attention, you're going to get some very valuable insight into what kind of parent you got there. Because they're going to say some really wonderful things like, if you don't stop doing that, I'm going to break your arm. So we want to kind of know, what kind of people are we dealing with? Obviously, you want them to be extremely comfortable. So only the best. And, the best can range from, Starbucks and pastry, whatever in your school feels right. And if you're really into nutrition, you're going to have big baskets of fruit and artisan cheeses and fruit juice, whatever you think is the right thing. But they should feel really, really comfortable. Or as soon as they arrive, you're pulling them into your reception room. The reception room could be your office, or it could be a special place. Again, it should be really, really, really comfortable. And this is where you're going to do the initial bonding with the people that show up before you go out into the world. This is because people don't usually arrive right on time. They keep coming in. So usually there's a slough time from 10 minutes before you're supposed to begin to usually about 10 minutes after you're supposed to begin, where people are still arriving. And of course, sometimes it's worse than that. They show up 40 minutes late, and now what are you going to do with them? You're somewhere on campus, and these characters have just arrived. So you have to have a backup plan of what you're going to do. I personally, depending on the school, we have a limit of how many people do we want to have on the tour. Generally speaking, I'd say 3, 5. In our case, it was 10. So we were willing to take up to 20 human beings, not including kids. So we would sometimes have 20, 30, 40 human bodies in our ante room. And we had to have a plan of what the heck we were going to do if it got that big. Normally it didn't. Normally you'd be lucky if you had 2 or 3 families, and sometimes that just meant one person per family. Maybe there's a kid in arms or in a stroller. Maybe it was just the parent alone. Some of those parents are sitting there watching their clock, and 15 minutes later they want to know, are we done yet? We all have had that happen. But ideally, what we're doing is we're screening, just like Amanda, you talked about, you're trying to figure out, is this someone I could really be with? That's what we're doing. And we're not trying to make everyone happy. On the other hand, we're not trying to make enemies either. We want to treat them with the utmost of kindness and courtesy, which also means we better be telling them in advance, what should they expect in this tour? How much time? Should they bring their child? Can they bring the family dog? Yes, people show up to these things with dogs. Um, you know, everything. Another thing in that room, depending on the age group you're dealing with, what are you going to have in that room to entertain the kids that have arrived? Because it's an adult conversation. Now, I love getting kids involved, but a lot of kids, they just don't know what to do, and they won't say a word. So I always have first rate Montessori materials or things that are able to be accessed by a child who doesn't know what the heck they're looking at, that will keep them busy for up to 20 minutes. And parents like that. I mean, first off, the idea of having a curriculum lab in your ante room can be really great. That can become a problem too if you have the wrong materials, because it could go down an infant's throat, or your $150 golden bead cube could go right smash up against the wall, and it's probably not what you want. So what we try to do is very carefully curate what's going to be there and what's going to keep those kids entertained, so that you can be at least having some kind of conversation with the parents saying, tell me more. Tell me what brought you here. What do you hope? What are you looking for? What questions do you have that I might be able to answer while we're waiting for other people to arrive? So we do all that kind of stuff. We have definitely communicated with them in advance. The better we communicate, the better the results are going to be. And we're not selling. That's a big point. We're not selling. What we're trying to do is say, we're delighted you're coming. This is what you can expect. This is what we're going to do during the experience. This is what you can do if your child gets sick, or if you get an urgent phone call and you feel like you have to go. No one's going to be angry at you. We're not going to shame you. But this is what the purpose of this meeting is. Another question is, are they going to show up with grandma? Are they going to show up with their significant other? The answer is probably not. They might. And if they do, that's great. But on the other hand, if they do show up alone, are you going to have them come back again? Is that going to be a mandatory part of the process? Now, today we're just talking about the open house. That's just the first date. That's all that is, the first date. And what we're trying to do is just figure out, do they get a warm, fuzzy feeling about what they see, what they smell, their experience? We're going to do a lot of things to try to give them an accurate picture of who we are, what we're all about. And by the way, if you decide you're interested, what's going to happen from here? Now, what I'm about to say may also shock you. I have two sayings. One, don't handicap your children's lives by making them too easy. And the second is play hard to get. Don't sell Montessori. Don't sell your school. You're not selling anything. What you're trying to do is just be incredibly kind, incredibly honest. And what you're trying to do is say, I want to show, I love my school. I love my school. Maybe you love the school too. You got a lot of great schools in this community. I know that what you're looking to do is find the perfect match for your family and for your child or children. We know it. We're here to try to help you figure out whether we're it. We're not going to twist your arm. We're not going to lie to you. We're not going to play any games. By the way, I do not believe in waiting lists. I think waiting lists are, in my opinion, how can I put it? Disgusting. My rationale there is a waiting list is simply, when did you show up? Okay, that's great. The real question is, are we right for you? And are you right for us? And so for me, while I may have a waiting list is just an indication that you showed up and you indicated you might be interested in a space if we have one available. Doesn't really tell me much at all. That's not how you build a marriage. I want a family that's going to come to my school and stay until the very last point of graduation. I'm not always going to get it. I can't make them promise it, but that's my goal. I want people who are going to be incredibly happy. I want families who are going to make my teachers and my children of the other families incredibly happy. I want everyone happy, and I can't make that happen. And so I just tell them right up front, we love our school. We think we're great. We're looking for families who are going to fall in love with our school. And what we'll do is we'll show you the truth, tell you the truth, slow you down. We don't want you to rush in and apply. We want you to figure out, are you falling in love with us? And if you are, we want to get to know you. One other thought before I shut up and get to you guys and let you chit chat on everything I've been throwing at you is, obviously I'm going to take them out into the school. You're going to figure out in your school, can I bring them into the classroom? Do I have one-way mirrors? Do I have them sit and watch a class? As I think, Amanda, you said you take them to a number of different classes for give or take 10, 15 minutes apiece. There's so many ways to do it. You got to figure out what's the best use of that first date. In some schools, Sanford Jones, back in his early days, used to say, when you come here, I'm not going to tell you anything at all about Montessori. What I'm going to do is, if you're interested, I'm going to sit you down in a class, and I just want you to sit there and watch it for an hour. If you can't stand it, if you're bored out of your skull, I want you to get up and leave. It's okay. But if you like what you see, if you really, really like it, then let's talk. And they don't even tell them what you're looking at. I personally don't like that. That's not how I would do it. But there are so many ways of doing it. I do bring large groups of people, literally 10 or more adults, right smack into a classroom. I want you to think about that. If you're a Montessori educator, it obviously means you better have a room that's big enough that they're not going to step on the kids' toes. But it also means that you've got to have a class that's so normalized that they're not going to go crazy because you brought a buffalo herd in. Now, what normally happens if you've done this right is, one, they're used to it. They don't really pay much attention. And two, what you normally do is you train one or two kids to be the ambassador of the day. So what happens is we get someone like Rupali who comes up and says, greetings, my friends. We are so happy you're here in our classroom. May I get you a cup of tea? Would you like a tour of the classroom? Would you like a lesson? I'd be happy to give you a lesson. If your kids do that kind of stuff, you're probably going to make a sale. But at the very least, you could have chairs where they sit, or you could have them up against the wall and say, please keep your kids under control. You know, we do normally tell parents, please don't bring your kids to these open houses. They're adult events. We're going to talk about adult things. And it makes your kid crazy if he goes from one preschool to the next and he hasn't got any clue what's going on. It's just overwhelming. On the other hand, if they're going to bring kids, have a dog, a really cute dog. They're going to remember your school. So just remember, you know, a little Maltese named Monty can go a long way, or a golden retriever. Again, you want a dog that doesn't trigger allergies. Bottom line is, I just always say to people, you know, what I'm going to do is I'd like to ask you to tell me a little bit about you and what led you here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about us and who we are. I'm going to try to help you understand how this morning's going to work. Then, after we've done a little chatting, we're going to go out, we're going to see what's happening at our school on this day. And I let my teachers know, don't worry about it. Whatever's happening is happening. Try not to be beaten up on kids. But we go out there, and I'm not looking for anything that's phony baloney. I just want them to be themselves, because that's what they're going to see as parents. And so we just go out and we see, and it could be we just stand there for 3 or 4 minutes and get a sense of the toddlers or the infants, get a sense of the early. And I can tell you, as someone who has always run schools that go through high schools, what sells the parents every single time is the high school. They all think, oh my God, if I come to Rapalli School, I'm not going to ever have to worry about it. I'm done. I could stay here until my kid is in high school. You and I both know they're going to leave as soon as the kid is tired of your school and wants to play football. But from the parent point of view, that they really like it. And if you don't go through high school, you go through middle school, that's great. You don't go through middle school, but you go through 6th grade, that's great. Go through 3rd grade is great. And if you don't, most of the schools that I work with, like the one I'm in right now in Oakland, they stop at kindergarten, and that's okay too. So we make the most of who we are. But I always say to them, if you don't fall in love, I really encourage you to keep looking. There's lots of great schools in our town. This is your precious child. It's the most important decision you are ever going to make. The cost of tuition is going to probably be bigger than your mortgage. You and I both know this is a really important decision. And I am not interested in selling you. I am interested in helping you to know what the truth is and see if we're the right fit. And that's how we do it. And by the way, at the end of it, what we always do is say, you know, from here, what are you going to do? Well, you could apply if that's what you want to do. Or you could say, can I come back again? Love to come and see it with my spouse. Or can my child come and see the school? Or can my aunt or my mother come and see the school? Or are there events that I can come and participate? Can I meet parents? Great believer in parent ambassador programs, where they can have a list of people they can call to find out what's it really like to be part of that school. We do all that stuff, including where do the kids go off to, and you know, we got people at these colleges and all that kind of statistic stuff. But the long and the short, it's really all about personal relationship. It's not about selling Montessori. It's about gut feelings. Now, there's so much more. And I haven't even looked at what's on the chat, but let me just hush up and see if any of you have anything you want to say. Hi, Rupali.
Hello, thank you so much, Mr. Selden, for this wonderful talk. You know, I feel I learn something new every time I hear you speak. So we do similar tours where we have parents come in and I meet with them. We walk through the classrooms, and our students are quite used to having guests come in. And often the class, there's one student who's the class greeter and will greet them. And like you said, it's very impressive. We sometimes have families who have children who are not thriving in a traditional school, and they feel that Montessori might be a good option. And while it works for most students, I feel for our school, we cannot serve students who are defiant or who we just don't have the staff to dedicate one-on-one time with students.
Yep.
And how how do we tell parents that we are not a good fit? That's where I struggle the most. Um,
Yeah, that's a very good question. Um, I guess one of the questions, Rupali, is because someone wants you, does that mean they're guaranteed admission? In the typical private school, you apply, there's an admissions process. A lot of things are considered to ask, is your child in our school a good fit? We only have so many spaces. And you may just have to say, and I'm so sorry, but we're not able to offer your child admission this year. You don't have to tell them why. You don't have to insult them. You simply say, I wish we had room for everyone, but we have to make very difficult decisions, and we don't. You can definitely tell them, if you have any doubts, I really encourage you to keep looking because your child deserves that. I think that's really important, in my opinion, in marketing. But I think the answer to your question is, because they want you doesn't mean you have to take them. You can graciously say, I'm so sorry. I wish we could offer you a space this year, but we're just not able to. Now, they don't like that. Don't get me wrong. They may call you up or send you a nasty letter saying, what's the matter? You don't like me because I'm Black, I'm African, I'm Jewish, whatever. Um, you're going to get a certain amount of that, but as long as that's not actually what you're doing, it's all based on your admissions committee sense of, is this family a good fit? Is this child a good fit? Will this kid blossom here? You only have so many spaces.
yeah, thank you. Because in the past, what we felt that I always feel that Montessori is right for every child, but what I've learned over the years is if you take students who are not a good fit, it really brings down the morale of the classroom, takes away
Oh
the
my goodness,
teacher's
yes,
time,
sure. Yeah.
and it's not helpful for the child, and the family just moves on to another school in 2 years. So they're not either committed. So
One of the sayings you've heard me say before is, a school is many things. It's buildings, it's grounds, it's curriculum, it's the money in the bank, but a school is really people.
mhm.
And the best schools in the world, whether under a tree in India or whether on a field in Africa or whatever, the reality is a school is really about the people who are gathered there together, and do they love each other? Are they the right fit?
Thank
It
you.
is hard. Well, I
Yeah.
guess that's it for this week. Clint, you were very, very silent. I was talking nonstop. I was on a roll.
Now
Um,
this is your territory. If someone says, "Hey, I need more people to come to my campus," I'm your guy. I'll help you get them there. The experience there is important. However, one important point about that, though, I'll put my marketing hat on for a second, which is, as you're getting those families on campus, understanding what your conversion rates are from tour to application. That kind of hits to your point, Tim, about how well you're doing to cultivate those relationships and selling your school, selling, your what you offer. Um, and if those numbers are not where you want them to be, maybe they're down compared to previous years, that gives an indication back to what you were saying, Tim, which is, hey, how good of a job are we doing on when we get people on campus? You know, I've talked with some
Yep.
schools, it's like, we have like a 90% conversion rate. Okay, that makes life really easy. We just got to get more people, more eyeballs, more people onto the campus. The challenge is when you start seeing that your conversion from tours to applications starts going into like the 40, 30%, 20%, you know, on average, it should be in like probably the mid 40s. Every school's a little bit different, but that's another just data point that you can utilize to help give an indication of how well are we doing with those tours and getting, you know, converting the right families into applications.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't agree more. I hope today was useful to everyone, whether you're still online or whether you're going to listen to this recorded. I noticed a lot of questions in today's Q&A. And what I'll try to do is I'll try to sit down and actually develop a set of answers, Clinton, if you're able to send those answers out when I get them ready to the people who attended or signed up, it might be helpful to them. And it may also suggest future topics that we ought to cover. So glad to do that.
Beautiful.
All right, everyone.
Thank you.
Paul, always good to see you, my friend. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone. See you next week.